So good afternoon. Hello, everybody. I hope you hear us well. We are in a nice room that belongs to the city of Barcelona. And we have our invited guests here. We would like to welcome to this first event that Women in Urban Mobility. That's a project from EIT Urban Mobility. And it's our first event in Barcelona. And we are very glad that you are all here. And we would like to start by having our special guest to introduce this first meetup in Barcelona. And first of all, let me introduce Sylvia Kassora. She's from the city of Barcelona, very tied to mobility issues in Barcelona. So please, go ahead, Sylvia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a big honor for me to participate in this workshop about women in urban mobility representing Barcelona City Council. We all know we've got a long way in front of us to remove the gender gap we live in our daily lives. In fact, in the beginning of this century, only 1% of the land of the world, 1%, belongs to women. In mobility and in the use of public space, this gender gap is also very clear. Women move mainly on foot and by public transit, while men move mainly by car and motorcycle. So women will lead the sustainable mobility. At the same time, women use public space in a more intense way because we are the ones that in general take more care of children and elderly people. And during the day, we've got different needs that lead us to a more flexible mobility than men. From the municipalities, we've got the key in our hands. We can decide how much space is dedicated to pedestrians, to cyclists, to bus lanes, to traffic calm streets, to playgrounds, terraces, green areas. Last century, we got cities completely full with cars, pollution, noise, accidents, space occupancy, climate emergency. Who took all these decisions? Who was using mainly the car? How many women were designing our cities last century? In Barcelona, we are now putting women in the center of our public space. And that's why we are really pushing policies to get a livable city, such as superblocks, of course, protecting the schools, or creating more and more kilometers of cycle lanes and traffic calming areas. Many women work now in mobility and transport issues, but just a few of them have high responsibilities at public bodies and transport companies. In this sense, as we said, women, we are the main public transport users, but in Renfe, which is the national railway company in Spain, women represent less than 11% of the employees. In TMB, the Barcelona Metropolitan Transport operator, women represent 20% of the employees. And in FTC, the Catalan Railways operator, women represent 28% of the employees. Doesn't make much sense that women, we are the most expert knowing users' needs, while the decision-making is basically taken by men. There are some good examples about gender plans, as the one from FTC, the Catalan railway companies, but we still got a long way to go. From Barcelona City Council, we are analyzing and working to reach a more inclusive city and to balance gender in mobility issues. For instance, we have found some studies, like one with Collectiu Puncís, to analyze what are the specific female needs in the cycling network in Barcelona, what are the existing barriers, and how to solve them to get a more gender balanced use of the bike. From this document, it has become clear that we need wider bike lanes, as well as safe parking spaces at ground level. We are also very glad with projects such as the one from Biciclot to promote more bike mechanic women. Creating women professional networks is crucial to overcome this gender gap. In Spain, we've got a great movement called Mujeres y Movimiento, and projects such as EIT Women in Urban Mobility might help us to better understand our patterns and make more women participate in the mobility planning and management. So from Barcelona City Council, we wish you a very successful project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia. And now our second guest speaker, Sylvia was from the city of Barcelona. Jean Maria Bigas is from the area metropolitana de Barcelona. So the big metropolitan area in Barcelona. So please, Joan Maria, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to this meetup. In the name of Barcelona metropolitan area, it's a pleasure for us to stay in this meetup and to make a view from the perspective of women in the mobility. It's very important the role of the women in the urban mobility, as women are mostly the main users of the mobility in the city of Barcelona, in the metropolitan area. And we think that it's very important. We are committed to improve the role of women in the design of this mobility, and also in the leadership of the urban mobility, because we think that we have a field, we have a gap to improve in that aspect. And well, in the next years, that would be very important to push these challenges. We think that women must be in the center of urban mobility, especially in public transport, where, as I said, they are the main users, and they have to participate in the design of the network, in the design of the offer, and the different systems of mobility. We think also it's very important for them to be an important part of the leadership of these companies, these public administrations, and let's say these services. It's very important for women to have an active role and to have the leadership of these services. Women in this aspect are still less than necessary in the fields of, for instance, engineering. The engineering it's a very important, let's say, role, has an important role in the design and the operation of urban mobility, and we have still few women in engineering, studying engineering, developing engineering in the academy in general. So we need to improve that, and we need to increase in the field of education the role of women, and that will get a better future in this field. We try to do our best in this aspect. In the Barcelona metropolitan area, for instance, we have developed a project that is devoted to women in the night bus system. We have what we call the stops on demand, and in certain areas of the metropolitan area, we allow different collectives of users, especially women, elder people, childs. We allow them to ask for a stop in all places, so elsewhere, so they can be safe to reach their home or their workplace. So to minimize the distance between the stop and the home or the workplace. So that's, we think it's an important project that is increasing more and more in the recent months. And different local communities have asked us to implement this project. So we are increasing that, and we think it will be in the future, also a challenge and a good project. And we also have in our team, we have also a group of women that they have developed what we called La Mirada Feminista, the feminist look, and they try to implement these improvements that I mentioned before, from the point of view of the design of the services, the contracts, the operators, etc. So, well, that's our small contributions to this to the role of the women in the urban mobility. And we think that, yeah, in the future that will increase, and we are committed to do so. So thank you very much for your attention, and be very welcome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to share the presentation. Maya, please, go ahead. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to start this first meetup within the project of Women in Urban Mobility. We have started with a very big commitment from the city of Barcelona. Thank you very much for being here, for talking about the great challenges that we have in this field of women and the professional parts of it. And you gave some percentages that we are happy to have. And thank you very much to the area of Metropolitan of Barcelona, which includes 36 municipalities, among them Barcelona. And you raised also a very important point, which is the education and the numbers of the percentages of girls today in our engineering schools that unfortunately are very low in some fields and are not raising that much in the last year. So we really have a lot of work to do in this field. And I would like to proceed with our first speaker. We are very happy to count with the presence of Immaculada Rivas Vila. Immaculada is an associate professor at the management department at UPC, and she will talk about the difference between mobility patterns in different countries regarding gender issues. Please take into account, for the ones that are following us from home, that you can write your questions directly in the chat. If you want to put your name, it's fine, but if you want to do it anonymously, and it's also fine, you don't need to explain who you are. Just ask whatever you feel and you have interest to know, and we will go to the round of answers at the end. Thank you. Ima, please.
Thank you, Laia. Well, this afternoon, Laia. This afternoon, I will try to answer the question if women and men have still different mobility patterns. So this is because some can think that these differences are not as valid for developed countries, but research shows that these differences are still valid for the most egalitarian society. So to try to answer this question, what I did was a literature review, and I selected some papers, academic papers and deliverables from research projects in order to analyze the mobility patterns around the world. So here I will present a few of them due to time constraint, but I hope that at the end of this presentation, we will find the answer to this question. So let's start. To introduce the subject, do you know when the analysis of mobility patterns start? Well, this was in late 1970s, when some transportation planners were beginning to recognize the mobility needs of population subgroups. In 1978, the first conference on women travel issues was held in United States. to claim gender as a variable to calculate the future infrastructure, to consider the dual role that many mothers took on as a worker, but also as a housekeeper. From then, several researchers and practitioners have studied the mobility patterns, and at the end, what they show is the pattern of men is really very simple. They go to work and come back, and the pattern of women are more complex because going to work, we stop to the school, and then sometimes we have to take care of other relatives and go shopping. So this is what Inés Sánchez de Madariaga named mobility of care. Notice that here I write the reference, and in the whole presentation I did the same. I write the reference with the name and the surname, because in order to show if the research was done by a woman or a man, because sometimes this is hidden, and by default, people think that is a man. So here I put this. Well, the second issue to consider is that women perceive the security or the risk in a different way than men. And this is something that they keep in mind in order to choose the transportation mode. So during the presentation, I will try to highlight these two facts, the mobility pattern and also the security issues. And during my presentation, we will travel around the world. We start in Africa. First, I put the mobility in a context. Here in Africa, cities are low density with a huge extension, which impose a substantial travel burden. Moreover, the high cost of fare and the poor connection between transportation modes and key points discourage to travel. So walking is the most dominant mode of transport among women and men. In this society, women are normally allocated almost all domestic activities and informal activities also. And they suffer from harassment when use the public transport. So this, as they don't have financial resources and they don't like to go in public transport, they are forced to go by walking to everywhere. But walk in Africa sometimes is very dangerous also, because there are not any specific places for pedestrians, and at night streets are very, very dark. Here I put some figures from Nairobi. In Nairobi, what I want to highlight here is that female, as I said, travel by foot, on foot, and men do it, but less, in less percentage. What I want to show here in this graph is the mobility of slum residents. Here we can see separate by gender, but also for by education level. Less educated means that they have at most primary school, and educate is that they took some other education after the primary school. What we can see in this graph is that to be educated, give more opportunities to travel or to work outside the settlement. But the less educated men have more opportunities than the most educated women. And also what I want to show here is that women try to avoid matatus. Matatus is a minibus run by a private company that go very fast and normally are overcrowded. And this is, women don't feel safe in this means of transport. If we see some figures from South Africa, which is a society a little bit different than in Nairobi, here we can see the trip purpose. In this case, I want to highlight that serve passengers, shopping, or visit relative is mainly done by women. And business trips, the percentage of business trips is done by men, or is higher by men. So regarding the means of transport, here we see that both women and men walk. But if we see the car driver and car passengers, what we realize is that women are car passengers and men are car drivers. None of them took train because they perceive both as dangerous, not only to be inside the train, but also walking to or from the station. In a focus group, women said that they perceive security risk when traveling at night, and also all the public transport they perceive as unsafe. Traveling to Asia, here in Asia, we find some mega cities that has been grown very, very fast in the last year. As the government do some actions in order to give women opportunities to travel, some young girls have access to the financial resources because work in manufacturing and service in the service sector, and they prefer to pay private means of transport than take the public transport because it's dangerous or they feel unsafe. In the south of Asia, they are involved in a traditional patriarchal family system. Women mainly stay at home, and for them, travel is very dangerous. And if they do that, the family monitorize the travel. As I said, harassment is a critical challenge. And two actions that governments took was reserve coach for women in everyday Delhi metro train and in Tokyo's commuter train. But this is not a solution, it's only a patch, because they can feel safe in these trains, but the problem is that they need to travel anywhere. And these trains do not cover all the mobility needs. So it's a measure very, very criticized for feminist groups, transportation planner, and also by the society. Looking some at this table here, these figures are from Pakistan. We can see mainly that women stay at home because men travel double as than female. We can see also that women do not ride bicycle. And regarding the trip purpose, we can see that the number of or average daily trip that men do is basically to go work and to go to social and cultural activities. But women, for instance, here we can see a small percentage of or a small trips by day to go to work, because the women do not have access to the labor market. Going to Delhi, here we can see, well, Delhi, the 94% of cars are owned, privately owned. So this provokes heavy traffic jams. But in this graph, what we can see is the travels, the means of travels used to go to work. What I only want to highlight here is that men have access to all of means of transport, and women or don't travel to go to work because work nearly, or take the bus or go walking. In Suzhou, China, here is the hours per day dedicated to different activities. We can see that care activities, in-home care activities, and subsistence, care activities are mainly done by women. Leisure activities, more men than women. And the travel time of men is higher than women. Regarding the mode of transport, as we expect, they walk or ride bicycle. And car is more used by men than women. Traveling now to Latin America. In Latin America, is the most urbanized region in the world. The cities have a high population density with transit, traffic congestion, and pollution. The rates of crime is rising, and there is a pronounced income inequality. Men also in this society have the dominant role, and women feel unsafe in the public transport. So Mexico City in 2002 proposed that the first 2 cars would be female only. And in 2008, the bus company created pink buses only for women. But I said before, this is not the solution for our problem. Here, in this graph, what I want to show is, is the mean of transport most popular in the different countries in Latin America. Here we can see that most of them use private car or transport. Then here we can see that men use bicycle more than women, and women walk more than men. In Marina Casas et al., they characterize the mobility patterns of women and men, and they found what we have been saying until now. Women has diverse trip purpose, and men mainly go and come back from work. Women travel during all the day because the mobility of care is during the day, and men at peak hours. Here, some figures from the city of Mexico. What we can see here is that women take more taxi than men. This is because they feel unsafe in the other means of transport. Here also the trip purpose is the same. Going to work is mainly done by men, and all the others is what we call the mobility of care, that is mainly done by women. Finally, we arrive to Europe, and what happened here? We are in the same figures than in the other countries, or or not? Our patterns are different. Here, what we can see is these numbers are took from the Gender Equality Index, calculated in 2020. And well, the index is the variation from 2010 to 2018, separated by women and men. And we can see that employment has rise for women, so this is good. The number of ministers or percentage of ministers also has rise. Women on boards in private companies also has improved, even though we are very far from the numbers of men. But relating to care activities, in 8 years is the same percentage. Here we cannot, we are not improved. Neither in segregation in employment and education, which means that women dedicate more to care, social work, and education activities. So this need to be improved. As a model choice, well, here car is the more used. This is something that we need as a society to improve. But we can see here is that the transportation mode used by women are more sustainable than those of men. This is took from the report from Civitas. Here they highlight the pattern of a woman from Western Europe, but I can say that is similar, very close to the pattern of the South Europe woman. And just to conclude, after this presentation, what is the answer to this question? Well, I think that the answer is yes, it is still different. The travel chain of women is more complex. And in Floridea Di Como and Suzanne Hodley said that women account for 80% of people in charge of mobility caring. Transportation planning is mainly focused on commuters. So when the frequency is reduced during the day, this affects the mobility of cars. And now this affects women. We have seen that the perception of risk determines the model choice. So here there is a need to improve the infrastructure, but take care where to put the bus stop, for instance, the light and the security. It's necessary to collect mobility data disaggregate by gender, because I found a lot of mobility studies, but few of them have this analysis separated by gender. And finally, we need to include more women in decision-making job, planning and transport delivery in order to take into account our needs. And that's all. After, if you have any question, I will be glad to answer.
Thank you very much, Ima Rivas, for this very interesting intervention. We have seen the different patterns of mobility taking into account gender, and we saw that it's a little bit different comparing different continents. From my point of view, it was extremely interesting, the data of Europe, and we saw that we are moving in the same direction. I think that Ajuntament de Barcelona talked about mobility issues concerning jobs, positions, and so on, and this was one of the conclusions. IMB talked about education and the rates of genders in our engineering classes, and this is something that was also a reason for Europe. And another thing that we will see now from our next intervention is the purpose of these trips. And we saw for European numbers that care, so trips to take care of our relatives, of elderly people. I guess that because of the population of Europe that is being older than in other, is getting older than in other continents, the percentage of these trips was mainly done by women, and this was one of the conclusions. And it's a great pleasure to introduce now our next speaker today, who is Oliva Garcia Cantú. He is the Chief Research and Development Officer at Nomon. Nomon is a company that works in data-driven solutions, and she is going to explain today data-driven, especially for gender issues. Please, thank you very much, Oliva.
Thank you, Maya. Thanks for this invitation. I have to say that I'm very excited about this event because I think gender perspective in mobility, as in many other fields, is quite interesting. So I'm very happy to talk today here. And
okay. Your presentation is...
It is not only about gender. That one.
Okay.
Yes. So I have to say it has very difficult to choose what to talk about today because there are so many indicators to look at related with gender. So I choose few of them just to have a glimpse of what is going on behind differences in mobility. If they are, we'll see at the end of this talk. I think Inma has already said yes. Let's see if the numbers say the same thing. So I'm gonna focus in a case study in Madrid. So, well, this is, can I remove this? So, I mean, I would like to see the full presentation. Okay, great. Thank you, excellent. So, well, I wasn't sure how to name. No? Okay. So we put this again, it doesn't really matter. I know it by heart, so it's okay, don't worry.
Está en pausa. One second. Let me just put it again.
Yeah.
So maybe I can put the desktop.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So, yeah, I wasn't sure how to name the talk, so I decided to call it There Are Gender Differences, but it's not about gender, but a second candidate was from personal experience to empirical data. And so I want to start this presentation, to introduce this presentation with a personal experience, with a personal anecdote. So I'm from Mexico City. I moved out before 2008, so I didn't have the opportunity to test the pink buses that Inma was telling us about. But I was here. I was in this crowded place when I had to go to the university. From Mexico City, all women and men, we are very, very conscious of which way to take, which path, sorry, I have to be here, which path to take. So you always try to take the safest and fastest way to your place, because of course it's a big city. But then I moved to London for my PhD, and I was feeling there, of course you may not believe it, but I was feeling there in a medium-sized city. Okay, I don't have to rush in a secure city. So I was taking the decisions better fit to me. So I was taking the tube every day to my house. And to get to my house from the tube station, I had to cross a cemetery. But I don't care cemeteries, you know, in Mexico we like the Day of the Dead and all these things. So I was okay crossing the cemetery. Until one day in the evening, quite dark, when I was surprised by 3 teenagers. And it wasn't a very nice surprise, although they were younger than me, they didn't look very friendly. So I decided to take a change of path for my daily commuter. So I was taking the bus, and then of course it was longer, it was crowded, but I had to walk a little bit less, and I didn't have to cross a dark cemetery. So it's how, okay, I start moving my patterns, my mobility patterns, according to the situations. And this happened again and again for different situations. And it was until I started working in mobility that I found out that my personal decisions were not personal decisions anymore, that I belonged to a group. And these groups, women group, tend to take decisions very similar to mine. And I also learned that there was a vast amount of fascinating literature about how women tend to move differently for men for different reasons. One of them, as Irma was pointing out, was security, but maybe it is not, the only one. So when I moved to work, this is a stop again. I don't know what to do. How can I advance? Anyway, when I started working at Nomon, which is a company, as Laia was mentioning, we work with data, it's remote. We extract mobility patterns from different geolocated data. This is one of our activities in Nomon, but we also work developing mobility models, simulation models. We also work with air transport systems and with other applications that we can find of understanding the mobility and activity patterns of the people extracted from mining data, especially data coming from geolocated areas. I put the version in Spanish. I'm really sorry. It should have been in English. Anyway, so either for transport and mobility, aviation, or marketing and retail applications that we have for the data information we got from the data, we of course need, in some cases, to know the gender and the age. And we work mainly with data coming from mobile phone records. So from there, we extract mobility patterns. And some of these, the users of the mobile phone records we work with, some of them, they don't have information about the age or the gender. So we start thinking, how can we infer this information? How can we get or impute this value to the missing values? So I remember all this literature. Okay, there are different mobility patterns. We are very good at non-extracting mobility patterns from mobile phone records. So can we use these differences to guess if there is a man or a woman? And then we start with reviewing the literature, different patterns. So how can we correct this missing? Here? Okay, excellent, thank you. So, okay, we start reviewing in the literature about different mobility patterns and indicators that could indicate differences, not only in age, but also in gender. So we look at the average number of trips, trip distance and travel time, distance from and to home, average distance from home, and average speed. And I'm very, very happy we were looking not only at gender, but also at age, because I found some very interesting things. I don't know if you look at it, but if we think at this, I mean, if we think of this as an X-ray, let's say that in here, our skeleton is the same. We cannot distinguish between men and women. From 0 to 10 years old, or still from 10 to 20 years old, we kind of make the same amount of average trips, either women or men. Still, it's difficult to distinguish in this specific indicator until 30. But what happened after 30? This difference becomes bigger, more pronounced. You see between 30 and 60. And then, okay, there is a switch. First, the average number of trips is higher for women than men. And then we get older and women decrease respect to men. But there is not so marked difference. The most marked difference is in here. So I was like, what is this related with? So we look at other indicators that we found in the literature. And we said, okay, let's look at the trip average distance. And we saw that it was the opposite. Okay, we do more trips, but we do shorter trips in these ages. And this, I mean, it is more expanded in the age range, but it is still very marked in this middle age range. What happened with the trip duration? Oh, it's smaller. Okay, we travel less distance. We are going to take less time to travel. And I say, okay, but is this commensurable? I mean, are we decreasing the distance in the same ratio? Or we are decreasing the travel time? Well, not. The speed is not. I mean, it should be the same, right? Well, not. We are slower. Our speed is smaller compared to men's speed. This is related with what? Well, it may be related with what Sylvia was already mentioned, that we are mostly user of public transport, which may, I'm not sure, be less, will be more time consuming than cars, etc. But there may be other differences. So we say, okay, let's see if we can find any clues from the survey. We did this analysis in the survey of mobility of the in a working. So we look at the purpose. Okay, this is men, this is women. These are the purpose, and this ridiculously small letters I'm gonna say is home, shopping, caring of someone or accompanying someone else, leisure, sport, personal business, other like medical visit or other activities, and work. And we say women and men, and the different colors are the different nature. We say that the home purpose is more or less equilibrated. Also, work purpose is more or less equilibrated. Okay, women, we commute. Oh, yes, of course. We are in this economy where we women have also work opportunities. We cannot complain about it, and we see in the mobility patterns is more or less equilibrated, men and women. But what happens if we go to the accompanying or care economy or care mobility field? So we see a big difference between male and female. So I'm not saying anything conclusive, I'm just saying this is telling us something. And this also related with the velocity of trips, take me to another personal anecdote that I have to say. I always thought that Madrid was very well connected by public transport. It was like that until I had my first child. What happened? Did any of these lines disappear? No, it's because now I have to be carrying a trolley. So maybe it's also not only security, not only we are carrying off someone, but also it's a matter of accessibility. How accessible are these means of transport that women are mainly the users of? So, well, we look at other different indicators to see if we will get more clues on what Ima was presenting us. And we look at the average distance from home, and well, we see this. This gives more or less equal, and we see that women, we tend to move closer, to make trips closer to our home, as Ingmar was mentioning, but I also wanted to see if this is different origins, this is a measured kind of entropy. From all the trips that I do, how many different origins I have. And it's not, I mean, this is not so marked, the difference. The reason here, I guess, I mean, we have to look further in this. I guess the reason is because this analysis, we are making it only with the data from the survey of market. We are working now, unfortunately, I don't have those results because we haven't finished. We're working on this for more days with the mobility patterns we have extracted from mobile phone records, which have the possibility to give you a longitudinal analysis. So we'll see if we can contrast one of these theories. Anyway, today I just wanted, I mean, there are millions of different indicators. It's mentioned very comprehensive list of different things we could look at. I wanted to just focus on this one because I think it's very important. When I hear in the previous presentations, women, we tend to go to work, or the kids, or men, they go to work. No, women and men, we are women and men since we are childs. And we haven't touched so far this difference, which I think is very important also to take into account when this change in the mobility patterns happens. So that's why I presented these specific indicators today, just to raise a new point in the discussion, which I thought it was a good point to start a nice discussion in the table today. So, well, for future research, these are things we are planning to do. I have good news for you. We are working on very disaggregated data for men, women, and for different ages. So we can do all kinds of studies. So now we want to look at, we'll start looking at the relationship also for socioeconomic status, and we'll start looking at the mobility of different neighborhoods. We'll also look at change of trips to see this home work or home. There are different theories. Either women will do home work, home, child school, home, whatever, home center, or there is this other theory, which I think is going to be more related with socioeconomic status, but let's see, or educational status. There is this theory that women will do home, work, child, school, supermarket, so on and so forth. So that's why we want also to look at the trip chains. And well, we want to look, as I said, more longitudinal data and see how mobility, which other patterns, interesting patterns we can find, taking advantage of the information we work with allows to look at longitudinal 1 year data, 1 week, or etc. And another missing analysis is accessibility and transport mode. So I want to finish this presentation with a few key messages. Yes, there are differences in mobility patterns for men and women observed in the Spanish population, yes. But some of these differences, like the ones I presented today, trip length, trip average velocity, number of trips, etc., they appear in middle age. And this seems to be associated. They seem, still we have to conclude with more deeper analysis, but they seem to be associated with the care of home. And of course, further research is needed to get a deeper understanding on the reason behind this difference and their implications to mobility planning. And I want to change this because I think we have done a lot of research. So I say, okay, further research is needed, but I will say also as a conclusion, some actions now are needed. And I want to recall the words of the beginning when, I mean, all these actions that are being taken in Barcelona, like different stops on demand and so on and so forth. Let's start thinking in accessibility. Let's start thinking in all the things we already know from the literature. And then, of course, let's keep on studying and researching on the possible causes and implications of the needs of this 50% of the population, which is not necessarily taken into account when we do urban planning. So thank you very much. And well, if you have any doubts or comments, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Oliva. It's a pleasure to have this kind of presentation with data. And we had the opportunity and the joy to share with you some even personal experiences that it's true that you do some things and you don't realize exactly why you do these choices in life. And sometimes just thinking about it, in your case, studying it, you can analyze better your choices that are not that personal as we thought at the beginning. Because as you said, we are part of a whole community, and it seems that this community takes similar choices as you did in the past. So thank you very much, and I think that you finished with a very important point. Let's take action, and let's start moving in the direction that research is showing. And to go into this direction and further talk about actions and planifications of our public transport. Today, it's a pleasure to have with us Carles Casas, who is the Strategic Planning Director of Ferrocarrils de la Generalitat. Ferrocarrils de la Generalitat is a train operator in Catalonia, and he's going to introduce the operator point of view in the daily operation with the gender perspective. This is the topic that we are having today. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. As I said, you can hear me well with this. So I said I'm Carles Casas, I'm the Strategic Planning Director at FGC. FGC is a regional railway company based in Barcelona. It's mainly a railway operator. And well, it seems that we put the right order in our presentations, because what I'm going to talk about is some of the actions we are taking and some of the initiatives that are already in place in order to tackle with these differences in the patterns in mobility between women and men. But my aim today is not just for you to know and to share with you what we are doing, but also to get you to know why we are doing this, and also to arise some questions and maybe give you also some insights. The previous presentations, in fact, labeled the field in the sense that the issues that were presented in a broad way, and keep that in mind. And now I'm going to talk it in a very specific case, which is a rail operator here in Barcelona, so Western Europe city, and rail operator mostly underground within the urban areas. So these are context situations that are the ones we are dealing with. We implemented a gender equality strategy. I'm going to talk about that. We are a railway company. That means that we don't like really to improvise. So the first things that we did is to state, and we acknowledge that there are these mobility patterns which are different, and also that there is a paradox that we presented on urban mobility and transport sector in general. Then we wanted to tackle it, so we looked at some data. Internally, results were not as conclusive as expected, but in order to take action, we needed solid ground under us, because, okay, we are a railway company, we don't like improvisation, but we like innovation. In that sense, maybe we're not the classical railway company, I would say. So in the end, we had some solid ground to take some actions, and I would like also to share with you some final remarks at the end. So it was already mentioned, we are a railway company, medium-sized, let's say, and we operate 4 metro lines here in Barcelona, and then we become suburban, and we have also some regional lines. We also operate mountain resorts and ski stations and so on, but that's not the topic today. Okay, the paradox I was mentioning. Public transport sector is mainly men-driven. Most of the employees are men, almost 80%. Statistics in Europe. But here in Barcelona, most of railway users are women. So it's a men-driven sector that provides service to women. There's something of a paradox here. There's a gap on both sides of the equation that we have to deal with and we have to tackle. So there's a need to introduce a gender perspective, because obviously, from just spontaneously, a sector which is 80% men will not take into account the needs of its main public, which is women, or at least 50-50. Okay, so there's something, some action that needs to be taken. So we start gathering some data. Okay, our profile, we are more or less following the broad statistics. So around 60% of our passengers are women. And we ask them on a regular basis on their perception on safety or security, I would say, not just safety. Our system is very safe, so they feel safe in our system. Now, on security, no significant differences. We were not expecting probably that. There are slight differences, so there's a higher perception of safety, security from men, but no significant differences. In fact, if we split it on data, we also ask for their perceptions of security, not only within their user station, but in their neighborhoods, in their cities, and so on. And the fact is that both men and women feel safer in our stations than outside the stations. So it's like once they have reached the system, in the system, which is a closed system control, they feel safer. And again, the difference, well, is hidden behind that. It's not very significant, less 0.1, 0.2, okay, over 10 points. So it's not very significant. We were surprised. Why is that happening? We also participate in a European project, which is Diamond. It's a project that deals with data and has very ambitious goals and so on. But I will focus on the case study that we participated here also in Barcelona, gathering some data on how were perceived the capacity or some of the characteristics of the system, of the rail system. Was it capable to meet the basic transport needs of the user? Was it accessible? Is it safe? And again, there were no significant gender-based differences. Why is that? We know that there are different gender mobility patterns, so that's not the reality. So something is shocking here. So those are open questions in the end. We are not the scientifics here, we just are moving people. But probably there's a bias on the perception also. Once you have unconsciously adapted to your pattern, then you feel safe on your daily trip because you are already avoiding dangerous situations. So when you are asked if you feel safe, you feel safe. Okay, so there's something there. Probably some of the public, of the passengers, the women, are already restricting some of their patterns or adapting their mobility patterns in order to avoid the situation. So when asked about the perceptions, those are quite similar to men, only at different times of the day or different moments. So we look further. We needed data, solid ground to take action. So we made an audit, mostly focused on security. Okay, an audit on our system from the gender perspective. It covered several stations, direct observations with several hours, each one of them, 4 levels from outside the station up to the platforms. And the idea was to diagnose and also to give us some criteria to start improving the stations and the perception also, the overall perception of the system. We received, after this audit, lots of recommendations. So we will not enter into detail. All these issues here were tackled, and from increasing the human factor, signaling, visibility, lighting, accessibility. Some of the issues were already arisen before. Others that we never thought about. As what happens when you're dealing with a specific group of customers in railways, also when you take action, then the benefits go wide over the whole of the customers, and not just the group you were tackling with. So if now stations have better lighting or signaling is more clear, that benefits all the public and not just the specific collectivity that was just highlighting this the need. Okay, so we took action from this audit and from all this data that I'm happy to share afterwards or comment on that. We started to take action in 2 directions. One, internally, okay, one side of the equation, the paradox, the sector has an underrepresentation of women as employees. It's 28% in our case. So we aim at increasing this percentage. We are actively changing it. We are actively promoting women inside the company. We are looking for high-end profiles, also at the management staff, at the management level, but also the driver side. Recently, an initiative is 2021, a hiring procedure for 105 new drivers. 40% of the positions were reserved for women. Okay, then that's already in place. Because we feel if we wait for the cultural change to happen, we know that will take too many years if it happens. We need this to boost it to some extent once, and then once it's consolidated, there will be no need of this kind of boosting. But the boost is really needed in my view, at least, and that's shared within FGC. That's internally. Also externally, incorporate the gender perspective on the design, on the service provision. And it was talked about before by Man Oliva, and they highlighted it, but there are these mobility patterns, and they can be because there are different gender roles in society. And that it's the role, it's not the gender, that leads you to different mobility patterns. Then the question is, okay, how we can contribute to change a broad a situation which goes beyond the public transport system. But also we have to ask ourselves as a company if we are contributing to these roles. And signaling is one of these examples. Okay, so we change our signaling. Now it's not just women carrying children. It's not just men that get injured because they play soccer or they go skiing. Okay, so we change. So this is an example of this kind of change. But also we have to think if our system is really well suited for the different needs of different collectivities. So that we are aiming at solving or trying to contribute to the solution of the two approaches. And also, as a company, as a public company, we just don't want to be, let's say, efficient or to be satisfied on what we do. We want to communicate. As a public company, we feel that we have this obligation towards society to prove that it's not only recommendable, but it's feasible. So let's say, to pray with example to some extent, both internally. Internal communication is essential. There are dynamics that go away from years, okay, especially in an industry like railway industry, maintenance, infrastructure maintenance. You can imagine those are male sectors still today, and externally. And so communication is also essential. And they said that I would talk about some specific actions, only some of them. Okay, I don't want you to bore you with all the things that we are, but from the administrative point of view, or tendering procedures now, they have some gender-related points, okay, and design, but the most visible ones are the ones linked to service. Signaling, I already mentioned it before, it's already in place. You can see it in our trains. Linked to the perception of security, okay, we improved the visibility of our communication posts. They were already there, but we realized that they were not well perceived. So fast action, just make them more brighter, and so to make them better perceived. Maybe in the future we'll change the shape and so on, but we wanted to take action immediately. They are being installed today, in fact, the first of them. More lighting. We've been changing lighting at all stations. The audit showed us that lighting was critical, visibility, to have clear lines of sight, to have transparency, okay, to put transparent walls instead of opaque walls. So this was to avoid cul-de-sacs, dead ends, okay, that was also, so we are redefining the design of the stations to avoid these situations and to improve them. The system is 150-year-old, so it goes step by step. It's accessible at least, so that was the big effort made. So we made the accessibility. Other less perceived actions, like we changed the maps of the surrounding areas in order to make it easier to get a clear view on where you are going once you leave the station. That also contributes to this safety perception. And then communication. We adhered to other campaigns that were not ferrocarrils campaigns, but like this one against sexual violence. So train fully decorated with the messages. Also, we train internally when there are these campaigns to get this perception. Training of almost half our staff, mostly operative staff, were trained to identify harassment within the system, so we could react. That was also added in our app. So if our clients see that there is some situation that it's unpleasant, either to them or in their vicinity, we can take immediate action through the app because the message is transmitted anonymously. And then campaigns, and you can find them also on YouTube, campaigns against violence and tolerance, zero tolerance against harassment, but also internally, trying to get more women inside the company, inside the business, as I said at the beginning. This is a video, in fact, which is in English subtitles in YouTube, just to promote this incorporation of women. And I get to the final remarks, okay? Maybe I just wanted to give you this overview. We can talk later if you have more questions. There's a paradox, okay? I mentioned at the beginning within the public transport sector, and it's a fact. We saw it before from the data that was presented, but also we see it in a daily basis in our system. Gender perspective has only not been taken into account when designing the public transport systems, or particularly the metro and railway lines. So being women, most of our passengers, it makes sense that we have to react to the situation and make sure that the service is provided. At FGC, we're taking action not just with specific initiatives, but within the framework of a strategy. It's a comprehensive approach, not just individual efforts or some happy ideas that come and go. We have this broad strategy covering all the issues that we have identified so far and taking a long-distance view, not just now, and all measures are linked and interlinked between each other. We also believe that, besides, as I mentioned, that besides our internal actions, raising this general awareness about gender equality evolution, it's needed, and we have to do it through communication and practice. And a final remark, because here I show you the picture of the first station manager at FGC in 1979, Anna Areste. When she was appointed to the post, there was not even a uniform for her. So luckily, she was skilled also as a dressmaker. So some days before, she adapted the uniform she already had within the company for it to become a station manager uniform. And so that was the situation not so long ago. Our first train drivers were at the beginning of the 90s. And our first female staff at train maintenance was 2008. So we are improving, but slowly. Those are individual efforts, but they are, which are inspiring, and that's why I share it with you. But that's not enough. In my view, we need these strategies with the full companies or full effort from all the companies and in general to introduce changes in society that are lasting. Okay, so, and the FGC want to contribute to this cultural change to produce a transformation on the society that will change also the gender patterns I was mentioning there at the beginning, so that the gender roles, so that the mobility patterns will be not so different, or at least they will not be different because of the gender roles in the society. And that was more or less the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for this very interesting and broad presentation of what are the numbers now today in terms of workers or in terms of drivers, that I did not know this paradox that men are driving, but women are in the buses riding. So numbers of workers and numbers of riders at the same time. At this comparison that I found it very interesting, and especially the part of actions. What are we doing now? Because as Olivia said, we can keep on researching for many years, but what we learned until today is that there are still differences, and that's why we are here. Thank you very much to all of you. And now we move into the part of the debate where you are asked to ask questions, to write questions in the chat. We already had some questions, and I asked the people who are following us online to keep writing. The first one is for Imma, and it comes from our people who are following us from home. And this is Galo Eduardo Cárdenas, who is asking, what international projects or initiatives can be benchmarked or replicated in order to increase studies or research projects related to women mobility patterns around the world? Do you think that it's a good idea if you can come to the stage and answer this so that the people who are at home can answer? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know if I have the right answer to this question, because probably I don't know the research that are going now, running now. But for instance, in the EIT Urban Mobility are doing a lot of projects, and I think that probably is a good idea to try, at least is what we do, to have partners from several cities in order to try to implement measures in different societies and to see what happens. But I think that I don't have the answer to which is the project or that can be benchmarked now. Well, in Civitas, for instance, Civitas is a network of cities aimed to have a cleaner transport, and they do a lot of initiatives. Probably looking at what they are doing is something that can help.
Maybe, Carlos, you can answer this a little bit more with international organizations that are working in these issues in transport and public transport.
Well, specific ideas or initiatives are still being gathered. Okay, we participate in several benchmarking groups, also in the frame of the UITP, International Union of Public Transport. New projects have been launched just to share the initiatives and be able to translate the solutions that are obtained in one neighborhood. But as gender patterns are really linked to social behavior and to the specific circumstances that was shown by in at the beginning, probably there are solutions which are not really transferable between continents as when we are benchmarking technical issues. Okay, so we have so in this sense, we have to be careful on how these solutions will be perceived by the customers and the specific situations. But yes, we are working together in this kind of initiatives. The Diamond project I mentioned before, the UPC and also the EIT, it's producing a lot of literature which is available. So there's already experience. We need more experience in practice to see.
Yes, indeed. Cultural differences are still to take into account in all these issues. I'm going to ask another question, and this is from Irem, and I guess that the person who is going to be able to answer this is Oliva. Do you have any ongoing or planned projects where the focus is on using this research information to tangible actions for mobility planning? Could you please answer this question?
Yeah, well, I can mention on I can mention on some of the projects we are working with, and of course we are thinking, if I well understood it, if we are thinking in ongoing projects. So at the moment, for instance, there is a European Union project called Momentum where we are collaborating. This is mainly focused on shared mobility, but one of the issues we looked at is how this shared mobility is giving an answer to some of the special needs or different needs of different groups, taking advantage that we can work with more disaggregated data. We are looking at the different patterns of the user of shared mobility, and we are looking at whether this is bringing a solution for certain needs, specific mobility needs. and how these are correlated with public transport. This is one example of a project we are working with, and the idea of this project is to end up with a list of recommendations for sustainable urban mobility plans. So this is one of the actions, and I think, well, in particular for the Horizon to Europe, there are many different initiatives for the implementation of this knowledge in practical solutions. So, well, tangible, I could only think about the Momentum project, which I, by the way, invite you to visit the webpage if you look at Momentum project from the Age 2020 Horizon. I think that I should do a little bit of
That's very good. You have to use opportunities. Thank you very much, Oliva. And the next question is again for Oliva. What further metrics, apart from age, distance, and time travel, can be adopted to better classify and better demystify, let's say, the urban mobility statistics for women?
Which other metrics?
Which are further metrics, apart from age, distance, and time travel?
Yes, I will say, well, as I was mentioning, I think...
Please come here to the stage, because the ones that are following us online, they can see. Time of the day.
Yes. One of the metrics we look at, for instance, but we have to further look at, investigate at this time of the day, as was mentioned also from IDMA, also accessibility, number of another very interesting metric, which is more related with security issues or security perception, is the number of transfers needed to go to one place to another. We tend to minimize the transfer between transport modes, especially if this implies to walk in the street, for instance. So this is another metric very interesting to look at. As I was talking about also, like looking at the full chain of trips to see if it's a single trip or is like chain in different activities can also help. And what I didn't get is demystify the urban mobility statistic for women. I think more than demystify is, I think we need to disaggregate and look closely on the difference. And I mean, yeah, I think age and purpose is very marked, is marking our activity. So I think we should tend to discretize more the analysis we do, rather than going from male and female. We should look at other issues, or other characteristics, as I was mentioning, also socio-economical characteristics. So yes, I think I will say those. Time of the day, number of transfers, longitudinal analysis for longer distance trips. Longer distance, I say, like change of community or, yeah, area of residence. And yes, I think I will summarize it there, yes.
Thank you very much, Oliva. We are going to keep on giving answer to the questions that we are having on the chat. The next one is for Douglas. And the question is, when you implemented the strategic initiative about addressing gender aspects within your organization, how was this perceived by mostly middle or upper management? Did you encounter some resistance or lack of motivation amongst employees, or the opposite? Were they all happy to implement these actions? And how did you deal with this? And I guess that depending on the audience, you are not very allowed to answer, but please go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, no, I must say, these kind of initiatives cannot be set in place against the company. Okay, if it's that's for a fact. So obviously, not everyone in a wide company like ours sees it with the same enthusiasm, and that's shared at all levels, from the new employees and more operative levels up to management, but obviously there's a commitment here from the top management to encourage these initiatives and make them work, and they are transversal. So, and I would say one of the first actions was to create the Gender Equality Committee within the company, with presence of employees participating and gathering initiatives that were interesting to adopt. So that there's been a lot of involvement of the company staff and the unions. Also, it's worth mentioning it because in some cases unions are also reluctant to these kind of changes, and we've had a very good collaboration with the unions in this approach, and they are active in this. So I would say that obviously the enthusiasm is not the same for everyone within the company. We've had a broad support from both management up to the unions, and that's what's making this strategy a reality. If not, something that we launched in 2018, but came from before, but probably it would be at a stop, and the pandemic would have been an excellent excuse just to postpone decisions and to postpone actions, and that was not the case. We kept going on this program, this strategy, despite the pandemic. So I would say that that it was perceived, I would say, probably in some cases with some surprise, because we have our men perspective. And some things we do not realize them until they are presented in front of us. And then once you see it, it's like opening the eyes, okay? So, and that happens also, because usually we tend to be there, like, to see ourselves as a standard human being in the world, white, average age male, and that's not the case.
Thank you very much. I think that you don't need to sit along, because actually the next question is still for you, Carlos. And it goes like that. Across the different presentations, we have seen today that women use public transport much more than men. Since your point of view, which action should we implement to invite masculine gender to enjoy public transport? This is the question. To enjoy public transport, to drive more often public transport, please. Thank you.
Well, here again, probably we should need more data to know why that's the situation. But probably the question, I would say in the reverse way, how could we make men to enjoy less their cars?
Yeah.
The different mobility patterns, also to the different gender roles, the different job positions. Maybe the job positions for women now are more suited for public transport. So there's a combination of factors. It's not just attracting men, it's making all this change in order to make public transport also as attractive for their mobility needs. So that would be, but probably it's more linked to the car issue I mentioned at the beginning. So making car less attractive will probably attract more men to the public transport.
Thank you very much. And now we have a question for the Barcelona municipality that we have today, Sylvia Kassora here. And the question is, do you think pilot projects actually contribute to change in mobility habits of citizens in our cities? Please go ahead.
Yes, sure. Pilot projects are really important to test the changes. For instance, in the Superblocks project, Superblock in Poblenou started as a pilot project with the students. Yeah, that was an excuse to really test the model, because sometimes we are analyzing data and studying and doing many things and many research and so on, but we don't take the further step. And of course, pilot projects are a really good excuse to take this further step, and it's really necessary that cities project pilots and really experience with the citizens. Sure, yeah, it's a good experience. Sure.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. And we don't have any more questions right now. If someone from the people who are following us from home have a question, just take this opportunity, the last minutes that you have. If people who are here in the audience want to ask some questions to our high-level speakers of this evening, please go ahead and do that. Okay, if not, I'll give the floor to Elisa Sairol from UPC so that she closes the event. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you to our speakers, our guests. I think your presentations were very inspiring and full of knowledge and questions to all of us. And we hope that this difference will, little by little, not be noticeable. We would like not to talk about this in few years. Also for the audience that is online, thank you very much. It was also, nice. We had many people connected. I don't know, Angelica, maybe around, our top was 40 something today, 48. So thank you very much. That was very nice to have you here. And just to close, this is part of a project from EIT Urban Mobility called Women in Urban Mobility. The coordinator partner is UnternehmerTUM. We in Munich, we have partners also in JA Bulgaria. And here in Barcelona, we are UPC and CARNET. We are very glad, so please follow us in our webpage, in our newsletters. We will continue to do this kind of events. And next event is in Munich. There is a meetup, the 16th of June. And in other, let's say, other events will be also announced in our networks, okay? So thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.